Today, I wanted to talk about teaching and lessons on learning, and especially learning styles. I get as though I want to have a little bit of a rant about it because I keep hearing people all the time talking about learning styles. I'm just going to take this ear monitor out because it's really difficult for me to hear what I'm talking about. They're talking about learning styles, and they say, "Oh, we've got to adapt our learning, our teaching. We've got to adapt the way that we teach. We have to be able to teach to lots of different people, and we have to teach all these different learning styles." And I'm just not sure I'm on board with it. When I was a young educator many years ago, I really bought into this whole thing about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. People learn visually, auditorily through listening, or kinesthetic through moving and doing. But I'm definitely out of that phase now. It's just not something that I subscribe to. And then there's all these things about, we can take these tests online to figure out what's your learning style, or your 20% visual learner and 50% this learner and 40% something else learner. And it's like a DNA test for learning. And again, I used to be into that. I used to subscribe to that. I used to try and sort of adjust my teaching so that I could accommodate all these different learning styles. But I have to say, I'm kind of moving away from that now as well. In fact, no, I've definitely moved away from it. And when people start to talk about learning styles and different types of learners, and they learn in different ways, I want to take them to one side and put a stop to it and explain just something that I believe. And I have to say, it's backed up by a growing body of evidence, which I'm sure you'll be able to research. And if you're interested in finding out where I get my evidence from, drop a comment in this video and I'll send you some links to some articles. And they're not just like Facebook posts, these are like scholarly articles that I can give you links to. And what this growing body of evidence is starting to establish and starting to irrefutably prove is that this whole thing about different styles of learning is it's on really shaky ground. Actually, it's not really the solid thing that people thought it was. And in essence, how more academic people than me and smarter people than me, learning psychologists and behavioral psychologists, how they're starting to establish this is the fact that, someone could say, "Oh, I'm this kind of learner. I'm a really visual learner, or I'm a really auditory learner, or I'm a really active learner," whatever. They could come up with this one thing. And when they're presented with all this information, in their particular style of learning, they don't necessarily perform any better than they did when they're presented with the information in an opposing style. So, for instance, I could say, well, I'm a very auditory learner. I learn by listening. And you could give me something to watch and then give me some kind of test or assessment afterwards. And I might score 10 out of 20. And I will say, "Oh, well, that's because it didn't accommodate my learning style." But then you could give me a new set of a new body of information. And this time you could accommodate my learning style. You could give it me auditorily to listen to. And if you still assess me in the same way, I would still come up with 10 out of 20. So what these tests and experiments and assessments and these kind of studies are showing is that if you accommodate people in this so-called learning style that they identify with, they don't necessarily perform any better than they did if you presented information not in this particular learning style. Does that make sense? Am I explaining this well? Am I fitting in with your style? So what we're establishing, and this is something that I really believe, is learners don't have a style of learning, i.e. I learn better this way, because there's no evidence to support that we learn better in any one way over any other way. Instead, what these learners might be referring to is a learning preference. How I prefer to learn is like this, not necessarily I learn better like this. That's not necessarily true. It just feels like I learn better because it's something that I prefer. So, for instance, I might say, oh, I'm a very visual learner. I learn visually. When what we actually mean, or what that learner means, is I prefer to watch things than to hear or to do. I prefer to watch. So it's my learning preference, not necessarily my learning style. And so really what that means is then any gains that are made uh, in the performance of a learner, their retention, their comprehension, their understanding, their ability to solve problems with the information that we've provided, any gains come not because we accommodated their learning style, because their learning style didn't really exist. Those gains came from the fact that the learner was more readily available to take on and to focus and to concentrate and to apply themselves to the information because they preferred the way it was delivered. Does that make sense? In other words, it became more enjoyable. And anything that becomes more enjoyable, we're more likely to retain, remember, understand, and most importantly, implement. So if it's given to us in a way that we really like, in a format that we're really enjoying, we're going to stay engaged, we're going to stay focused, we're going to retain the information, and we're going to be more invested in it, so we're more likely to implement it, which means it becomes part of who we are and part of what we do. Whereas the information is presented to us in a way that we don't prefer, whether that's auditorily, visually, kinesthetically, whatever, we're less likely to engage with it because we're going to enjoy it less. And because we engage with it less, we're less likely to stay focused. And because we're less likely to stay focused, we're less likely to retain. And because we're less likely to retain, we're less likely to implement. And so the information goes in and comes back out again. Is this making sense? So what am I saying as a result of all this? I guess what I'm saying is this whole thing about learning styles every day that passes is more and more proving to be inaccurate. And what it means is that learners don't have a learning style, they have a learning preference. So, what does that mean to us as teachers? Well, in actual fact, not an awful lot, really. But going right back to the beginning, I do a lot of educator training classes, and educators are always saying, oh, I'm going to learn how to teach in this style and accommodate that style. And I find it really challenging because there's all these different types of learners. The reality is, and this is where we get onto my belief now, this has not particularly been proven in science. This is just something that I believe, and it's born out of experience. I believe that rather than thinking about individual styles and how do I present this in this style, that style, and the other style, just present it in all styles. Just do everything. Do something that can be seen, something that can be watched, something that can be heard, something that can be listened to, and something that can be done, something that can be experienced, something that involves physicality, physical application and movement. Just make sure that when you're presenting a body of information, whatever body of information that is, make sure that you hit all of those different points. What can they see? What can they hear? What can they do and try? For me personally, it doesn't really matter what kind of learner they are or what their preference is. Everybody's retention and implementation seems to increase if the information is somehow turned into an experience. If the information can somehow become experiential. The more experiential the information is, the more people seem to engage, focus, and retain it. Now, that then goes back to the other thing. Well, how do we make it an experiential learning? How do we create an experience? Because, this learner might be very active and very energetic, and this learner might be really shy and retiring. And I've no doubt that that's true. You've got some people that are going to jump forward and get involved in group work, and you've got some people that are going to step back and really not, they want to be solo. But the point is, the information, the delivery is still experiential. So what we should be changing is not the style, but the type of experience that we offer. So can we offer some experience that involves groups and involves group collaboration? Can we then tone that down so maybe the group collaboration becomes paired collaboration, maybe just this person and one other person? Could we pare it down even further where the paired collaboration just becomes a solo event or a solo experience or a solo activity? So can we appeal to different people in that way? If I have, in other words, putting this in really plain English, if I've got somebody that's really shy in my room, but I want to create experiences for them, can I give them very low key, very safe, very low risk experiences where they can see the benefit, they can build up some experience. Most importantly, they can build up some confidence through positive reinforcement and celebration, and then perhaps they can join somebody else. And once they feel safe with somebody else, perhaps they can join another pair, and then that quartet can then join another quartet, and we can build it up that way. So the point I'm making, my friends, is don't get too wrapped up on this business about learning styles, because I genuinely believe, and so far I seem to be being proven more and more right through science, that learning styles is a bit of a myth. And what they are in actual fact are learning preferences. I prefer to learn this way. So with that being said, how can you engage people more and get them focused for longer, get them to retain and implement the information? You can make it appealing to people. And you make it appealing to people by creating some kind of activity, some kind of experience that's positive, that creates reinforcement and collaboration. So I coined a term a long time ago. I called it full body learning. It's where you're using everything, your eyes, your ears, your fingers, your feet, your legs, your arms, everything, full body learning. So what can you do to create a full body learning experience? And then afterwards, you could talk about it and reflect on it, and then they could journal it and write things down. So you're hitting all those preferences. You're hitting the people who prefer to be active and moving around, the people that prefer to be in smaller groups, and the people that prefer to be alone, reflecting on their things. Okay, so try to think of learning preferences more than learning styles. And what I would say is, with your information, is try and incorporate all things into it as much as you can. For me, by far, and again, I think this is pretty much proven by science, the two strongest things for memory are definitely visual and spatial. When we see something and we walk it or do it, visual and spatial delivery of information definitely leads to better memory retention. So what can you do to make your information visual and spatial? Because that way the majority of people will engage with it, retain it, and implement it for longer. Okay, so look, I hope that's been helpful. If it's been helpful, just drop a comment before. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be doing more and more of these, I think, because I just need somewhere to come and have a little rant. And if nobody watches them, that's fine. It's very cathartic getting all the information out. But hopefully it's been useful too. All right, I'm going to finish up there, my friends. I'll try and keep all these videos less than 15 minutes because we'll talk about that in another video, the 15-minute rule, people's capacity to take on new information. All right, take care, my friends. Like and subscribe. See you later. Bye-bye.